it speaks on its own. So the message that I want to share with you today, brothers and sisters, is this. Everybody repeat after me. There will be no rapture. There will be no rapture. And Jesus is not coming back. One of the main themes that I used to stress mostly when I first became the pastor here was having a renewed mind. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I used to stress that all the time. Stop being thoughtless. Learn how to think. Everybody repeat after me. The most painful thing, for most people is having to think. Having to think is more painful than going to the dentist for some people. Having to think, man, is just painful. You know why? Because when you think, it automatically alters your paradigm.
Plagiarism. Upon your brow I place this diadem. In the great lodge of the heavens and earth, you are the Christ. In Egypt.
Spirituality is a way of accepting the fact that there is a spiritual force in the universe larger than all of mankind. But someone had to come along and invent a word called God. And someone had to say of another God and say, mine is better than yours. And someone had to create faith. Someone said, I have the true faith. Religion is the organization of spirituality into something that became the handmaiden of conquerors. Nearly all religions were brought to people and imposed on people by conquerors and used as the framework to control their mind. My main point here is that if you are the child of God and God is a part of you, then in your imagination, God's supposed to look like you. And when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoners of that other people.
The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things. The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things. The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things. The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things.
Racism is a dynamic that impacts the entire world, the known universe as we know it here. And racism is the dominant dynamic on this planet. And if we do not understand racism, I might as well quote Mr. Neely Fuller, who says that if you do not understand racism, meaning white supremacy, then everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. I'll say that again. If you don't understand racism, meaning white supremacy, and I think Mr. Fuller says what it is and exactly how it works, everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. And I will follow up by focusing on how we have become accustomed to greeting each other.
Je crois que le mal que l'occupant nous a fait n'est pas encore guéri. Voilà le fond du problème. L'aliénation culturelle finit par être partie intégrante de notre sens, de notre âme. Et quand on croit s'en être débarrassé, on ne l'a pas encore fait complètement. Souvent, le colonisé ressemble un peu, ou l'ex-colonisé même, ressemble un peu à cet esclave du 19e siècle, qui libéré va jusqu'au pas de la porte, et puis revient à la maison parce qu'il ne sait plus où aller. Il ne sait plus où aller. Depuis le temps qu'il a perdu la liberté. Depuis le temps qu'il a acquis des réflexes de subordination. Depuis le temps qu'il a pensé, comme appris à penser à travers son maître. C'est un peu ce qui est arrivé aussi à l'intelligence artificielle dans son ensemble. Parce que, en dehors de quelques questions, toutes les questions que vous m'avez posées reviennent à une seule. Quand est-ce que les Blancs vous reconnaîtront-ils? Parce que la vérité sont blanches. C'est cela. Mais c'est dangereux ce que vous dites. Parce que si réellement l'égalité intellectuelle est tangible, l'Afrique devrait, sur des thèmes controversés, être capable d'accéder à la vérité par sa propre investigation intellectuelle, se maintenir à cette vérité jusqu'à ce que l'humanité sache que l'Afrique ne sera plus frustrée, que les idéologues perdront leur temps, parce qu'ils ont rencontré des intelligences égales qui peuvent leur tenir tête sur le plan de la recherche de la vérité. Mais vous êtes persuadé que pour qu'une vérité soit valable et objective, il faut qu'elle soit blanche. Mais ça, c'est un repli de notre âme qui doit disparaître. Moi, j'ai des idées que j'ai toujours développées et contre lesquelles vous ne pouvez pas opposer des arguments scientifiques dignes de ce nom. Vous pouvez opposer une conspiration du silence, aussi longtemps que les jeunes générations africaines resteront aliénées, jusqu'à ce qu'elles se récupèrent, jusqu'à ce qu'elles acquièrent la connaissance directe, parce que c'est par la connaissance directe, par l'égyptologie, que vous dépasserez ce stade de flottement, n'est-ce pas, et de somnambulisme. Vous voyez, on a presque le cerveau vidé, et les arguments d'une certaine source ne se fixent plus. C'est ça l'aliénation. Parce que vous demandez, que valent donc ces arguments-là? Est-ce que j'ai inventé les projections que je vous ai faites, que vous pouvez retrouver dans la vallée du Nil, où vous trouverez justement cette civilisation qui est distinguée, ces agents qui se sont représentés plus noirs que vous-même. Mais déjà, vous avez les œillères de l'éducation colonialiste et vous ne pouvez plus voir cette réalité palpable. C'est ça la cécité intellectuelle. Vous comprenez où est la raison dans cette éducation? Où est la raison? Où est le développement du sens critique dans cette éducation? Voilà le danger contre lequel nous devons nous prémunir. Il faut que votre cerveau fonctionne. Je disais encore hier et je le répéterai demain, que ce que nous voulons, ce que nous disons dans votre éducation, c'est de réveiller justement le bâtisseur de nations qui dort en chacun de vous. C'est de réveiller le créateur qui dort en chacun de vous. Et cela suppose donc une réforme qui met l'accent sur la rationalité, sur les facultés créatrices de l'individu et sur l'indépendance intellectuelle. Voilà.
I think I have the right to define for myself an understanding of a word and hope it makes sense to you. In the definition of its true purpose, what did I just say? Its true purpose, Christianity may be defined as, notice what I have here, a Euro-Gentile. Let me stop right there before I go any further. What do you mean, Pastor, by Euro-Gentile? I mean, number one, it came from the Europeans. Number one. Number two, it came, and the Europeans, according to the biblical text, are Gentiles. Who did I say were Gentiles? According to the Bible, black people are not Gentiles, y'all. Now, I know we've been taught that we are, but according to the Bible, we are not. Write it down if you don't know this. Write down Genesis, the 10th chapter, verses 2 through 5. In fact, I won't just do that to you. I'm going to read it for you right quick. Genesis 2, verses 2 through 5. From the biblical perspective, it says, Genesis 10, verses 2 through 5. I'll start the first verse. Now, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. What three people? Shem, Ham, now, let me say this at the outset, and I told you now, I may say some things that kind of spit outside your circle. Don't freak out on me. All right? Hear what I'm saying. Go verify what I'm saying. Ham, Shem, and Japheth never existed. From the perspective of world history.
That's right, teach.
From the perspective of the Bible, they existed. Are y'all following what I'm saying? But from the perspective of world history, not one person mentioned in the biblical text ever historically lived. So you're looking at two perspectives here. You're looking at the biblical perspective. You're looking at historical fact. Okay, that's why, brothers and sisters, not one of you in this room can go find the family
Teach, Pastor.
of anybody mentioned in the Bible. There's no family lineage alive today of anybody. There's no grave of anybody mentioned in the Bible. So we got to learn to think from two perspectives. You got to learn to think from the perspective of fact and from the perspective of biblical mythology. You follow what I'm saying? Back to Genesis 10. It says, second verse, the sons of Japheth. Now Japheth, by the way, from the biblical perspective, is the progenitor of the European nations. Gomer, Magog. Magog means Europe. What did I just do here? Okay. Magog means Europe. And Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshach and Tyrus. Tubal, for the brothers of the craft. You see it there? Hey, buddy, okay. Third verse, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Riphath. We call that Germany today. Okay, fourth verse, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dodan, and we call that Spain today. Fifth verse, it says, by these names we just named, the descendants of Japheth, were the isles of the, does anybody see what it says? By the isles of the who? Gentiles, yes. Divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue and after their families and their nations. Now, that's it for Gentiles. Yes. The next category starts in the next verse. It says, and the sons of Ham are who? Cush, which we call Ethiopia today. Who else? Mizraim, which we call Egypt or Kemet today. Who else? Phut, which we call Libya today. And Canaan, which is called Palestine today. So you see, these nationalities are not Gentiles.
That's right.
That's right. Yes.
So when I say Euro-Gentile, I mean European, Gentile, Greco-Roman. What do I mean by that? Greco. Greece, yes. The Greco-Roman culture. Roman because of the Roman Empire, living under Hellenism of that day. Psycho-philosophical. Y'all don't mind my words, do you? It's my best way I can break this down to you. Psycho, here, having to do with the mind. So when we look at this definition, we see that the Euro-Gentile, Greco-Roman, psycho-philosophical vehicle that had been put in place of spiritual and intellectual enslavement, which has as its end three things. Read them with me. What's the first one? The cultural and racial superiority of the people who created it. Stop right there. Everybody needs to understand religion is nothing more than the deification of a culture. Okay? And it depends on where you're born. Depends on where you're born geographically. That has a lot to do with what your religion is going to be. In other words, people born in Japan are not Christians. They're Buddhists.